Miss Ronke was a woman forged in the fire of her life trials. As a single mother, she had raised her daughter Aisha through years of hardship, fiercely independent and unwavering in her resolve. She believed discipline and structure were the cornerstone of success, but her strict demeanor often left Aisha feeling unheard and distant from her mother. At 35, Miss Ronke believed she had finally found a new chance at happiness when she married Mr. Badmus, a wealthy and charming man who promised to provide stability for her family. Mr. Badmus had accepted to stepfather Aisha and co-parent. To the world, Mr. Badmus was the perfect husband, kind, supportive, and generous. But behind closed doors, he was a predator hiding in plain sight. His arrival into their home marked the beginning of nightmare that would shatter Aisha's innocence and threaten her own very existence. It started with subtle, uncomfortable moments, a lingering hand on Aisha's shoulder, an inappropriate comment, touches mixed with humor. At 17, Aisha was unsure of how to react to these touches and advances by Mr. Badmus as stepfather. She tried to tell her mother the discomfort she felt around him, but Ronke, blinded by love and trust, dismissed her concerns. "Your stepfather is a good man," she said firmly. "Don't say such things about him." The mother dismissed Aisha. The first assault happened on a rainy night. Aisha had been studying late in her room when Mr. Badmus entered unannounced. His voice was calm, but his intentions were not anything good. She tried to resist him, but his strength overpowered her, and she tried to plead and cry. He whispered chilling threats into her ear. "If you tell anybody, I will kill you and your mother." He hissed, tearing her pants apart. From that moment, Aisha's world changed. Fear became a constant companion. Her silence was golden and heartbreaking. Mr. Badmus, her stepfather, had taken advantage of her and raped her. Weeks later, Aisha discovered that she is pregnant. Terrified and ashamed, she kept the secret to herself until Mr. Badmus noticed her distress. Without shedding sympathy or empathy, he arranged for her to have an abortion in a small clinic off town. The experience was narrowing, devastating, leaving her physically and emotionally scared. Aisha was in pain, but this was only the beginning. Over the weeks and months, the abuse continued. Mr. Badmus' control over Aisha deepened as he manipulated her into silence. She endured 2 more abortions, each moment with more trauma than the other. After the second abortion, Aisha fell into despair. The weight of her trauma became unbearable, and she turned to drugs to numb the pain. A friend introduced her to marijuana, which offered temporary relief from anxiety and depression. Soon after, she began abusing pentoxicin, a painkiller that could dull her physical and emotional anguish. These drugs became a support, but they also came at a cost. Aisha's academic performances reduced. Once a top student with dreams of becoming a lawyer, she now struggled to focus in class. Her teachers noticed the change but assumed it was typical of teenage rebellion. Her friends, Eniola and Ruth, tried to help Aisha, but Aisha's walls were impenetrable. She became increasingly withdrawn, her once bright spirit replaced with hollow emptiness. The turning point came after the third abortion. The procedure, conducted in an unsanitary condition, left Aisha on the verge of death. She bled profusely and suffered from a high fever, hemorrhage, and a potential sepsis. Aisha, alone in her room, she thought that life was slipping away. It was in this moment of despair that she made her first suicide attempt. She swallowed a handful of pills, hoping to escape the nightmare that would kill her eventually. But Ruth, worried after not hearing from Aisha all day, decided to go to her house, arrived just in time to call for help. Aisha was rushed to the hospital, her life saved. Despite the intervention, Aisha's pain persisted. She began seeing a therapist who prescribed antidepressants, but the medication offered little solace. Aisha could not still confess what she has been going through to the therapist. She was abused sexually by the stepfather, molested, she was draining, attempted suicide, but she left that part of conversations out. The memories of the abuse haunted her, and the fear of Mr. Batmo's threats kept haunting her. One night, in a high of marijuana snapped under her weight, she collapsed to the floor. Aisha, beautiful, elegant young girl with dreams. Her dreams were almost cut short by the molestation and sexual harassment of her stepfather, Mr. Badmus. On several occasions, Aisha tried to discuss her pains and what she was going through with her biological mother, but she often would not listen. Miss Ronke had lived her life enjoying and paying little attention to raising her daughter. She felt like everything revolved around money, no quality conversation, no proper bonding. She would often tell Aisha, "Why are you sad? Do you need more money? I will give you more money. Is it about school?" She paid little attention to Aisha's problems. Aisha found solace in her friends, Eniola and Ruth. Oftentimes, the friend will come, be with her, console her, and make her feel better. Aisha's life was in shambles after attempting 2 suicides, after having 3 abortions for the stepfather, and the last one almost taking her life. Aisha was despicable and unsocial in class. She hated the boys, hated the male teachers, hated everything that looks male. Aisha was almost pushed into drugs, weed smoking. It was most hurtful to imagine that Mr. Batmus, after molesting Aisha, was still keeping a very good romantic, cordial relationship with her mother, often playing around the house, love-dovey attitude, and buying her gifts, as well buying for Aisha. He was a devil in human form, a pretender, an evil man. Mr. Badmus was very wicked, that he even wanted to take advantage of Aisha's friends. Little did Aisha know that he had lived this lifestyle for many years. Aisha tried to talk to the mother, but she refused to listen well. "Don't say anything bad about my husband, please. I want to enjoy my marriage. Do you know how hard it is to be a single mother? If you're not comfortable staying in this house with us, you can get yourself an apartment somewhere else. After all, when I gave birth to you, I was just 2 years older than you." So, these words from Mrs. Ronke hurt Aisha so bad that she felt like she was alone. Her friends were the only person there for her. The silence the friends shared were not ordinary. Aisha's friends had their own ordeal with Mr. Badmus. They themselves had a story to tell, but in order not to dampen and make the matter worse for Aisha, they kept it a secret. Aisha sat on the edge of her bed, staring blankly at the wall, her thoughts swirling in turmoil. The past weeks had been unbearable, and though she had tried to keep everything buried, the weight of it was crushing her. She wasn't the one who carried this burden. Her friends, Ruth and Eniola, also had their own scars, all tied to the same wicked man of his stepfather, Mr. Badmus. It all began on an ordinary afternoon when Ruth and Eniola came over to Aisha's house to study. Mr. Badmus, always polite, cheerful in public, had offered them snacks and asked about their studies. To the outside world, he was a caring guardian, but behind closed doors, his true nature emerged. Ruth was the first to sense something wrong. While they were sitting in the living room, Mr. Badmus asked her to help him bring a box of books from his room. Ruth hesitated, but didn't want to seem rude. When they got to the room, he closed the door behind them and stood too close, his gaze heavy and invasive, sexual and harassing. Ruth felt a chill run down her spine as he placed a hand on her shoulder, holding in a moment too long. She pulled away. He tried to touch her breast. A quick tap on her ass she felt from Mr. Badmus. She pulled away and muttered excuses, frowning to leave. He pulled her forcefully, tried to kiss her. She didn't tell anyone what happened at first. She thought maybe she had imagined it or overreacted. But a week later, it was Eniola's turn to visit Aisha. Mr. Badmus had been unusually friendly, offering to help Eniola fix her broken necklace, buy her a new iPhone. He led her to the dining table where he insisted she sit while he worked on the tasks with her. At first, it seemed innocent, but then his hand lingered on her neck, his fingers lodging in her cleavage, trying to get into her in-between. Her middle was wet. Eniola was a freaky girl. She maintained composure, thereby also feeling sensation even though she was irritated. She stood up abruptly. He laughed it off, calling her shy. Mr. Badmus said, "Come, sweet Eniola, why are you shy? Let me make you sweet and happy." Aisha knew something wasn't right. The closeness the stepfather was beginning to initiate between her friends. Ruth nor Eniola had told anything yet. They did not mention anything. She had been living under Mr. Badmu's roof for years, enduring his subtle touches, so Aisha knew when something looks wrong. At first, she had convinced herself that it wasn't anything serious, but she began to overthink. She now had the boldness to confront her friend. One day, while Ruth and Eniola were visiting again, the truth came out. The three friends were sitting in Aisha's room when Eniola, unstable and unable to hold it any longer, broke down in tears. Ruth, alarmed, asked her, "What's wrong, my friend? Why are you crying? Why are you crying?" After much delay, Eniola confessed what had happened. Mr. Badmus has been trying to sexually harass us. Aisha sat in stunned silence, her heart racing. She looked at Ruth, who shifted uncomfortably before admitting that she herself experienced something similar. Aisha's hand trembled as she realized that they were all connected to the same nightmare. Tears streamed down her face as she told them about her own experiences with Mr. Badmus. They all confessed. The room fell silent, the weight of their shared pain pressing down on them all. "We can't continue like this. We can't let this continue," Eniola whispered, her voice shaking. "But who will believe us?" Ruth asked. Her fear was evident. Aisha wiped her tears and took a deep breath. "We have to try together." For the first time in years, Aisha felt a glimmer of hope. They had been silent for too long, but now they had each other, and together they vowed to find a way to speak and stop the nonsense that Mr. Badmus was doing to them. The end of fear. Her friends refused to give up on her. Ruth and Eniola staged an intervention, urging Aisha to fight back. They reminded her of her strength and of the bright future she once dreamed of becoming a lawyer, slowly slipping away. Aisha began to rethink and regain her strength. Then they plotted something. Aisha had realized that staying silent was no longer an option. She determined to gather evidence against Mr. Badmus. Aisha planted a hidden camera in her room. She also began documenting every detail of the abuse in a journal. Her friends supported her, promising to testify if the time came. The plan was risky, but Aisha knew it was for her own good, and it was her only chance to escape this cycle of violence, abuse, and trauma. One night, Mr. Badmus entered her room, unaware of the camera recording his every move. He approached her as usual. Aisha gripped a kitchen knife hidden under her pillow. She had reached her breaking point. When he tried to assault her, she fought back with everything she had, piercing him with the knife. The struggle was chaotic, filled with screams and shouts. In the chaos, Aisha stabbed him in the abdomen. He fell to the floor, rolling in pain for his life. The commotion drew Miss Ronke to the scene. She froze in shock at the sight of her husband bleeding on her daughter, clutching a bloody knife. Aisha, trembling but defiant, revealed the truth. She played the footage from the hidden camera and handed over the journal. For the first time, Miss Ronke saw the extent of her daughter's suffering. The realization shattered her. The police arrived shortly, took Mr. Badmus. After treating him for recovery, started investigation and put him in trial. Despite the revelation that had happened, Aisha still felt down and weak. Eniola and Ruth came forward with their own stories, testifying against Mr. Badmus, revealing that he also assaulted them. The evidence was overwhelming, and Mr. Badmus was sentenced to life in prison. The aftermath was a time of healing and reconciliation. Mrs. Ronke, wrecked with guilt, became Aisha's strongest supporter. She helped her daughter through therapy and rehabilitation, ensuring that she had the tools to rebuild her life. Aisha, though scared, found her strength again for survival. She returned to school, determined to achieve her dream of becoming a lawyer and fighting for justice for other girls like her. Her story became a beacon of hope. Her courage to confront her abuser smartly and seek justice inspired many other young girls at school, proving that even in the face of unimaginable pain, there is a path to healing and redemption. Aisha went on to become a beautiful, smart lawyer, helping girls in rape cases pro bono. Thank you for watching, guys.